I spotted my daughter sitting out on a wooden bench in front of Oakwood Community Center, with her 2 boys and 3 stuffed suitcases lined up beside her like they were waiting on a bus that was never coming. It was a Tuesday afternoon toward the end of October, and those red and gold maple leaves were drifting down all around them, spinning through the air like pieces of a life breaking apart right in front of me. The twins, Liam and Noah, 8 years old and always full of energy, were crouched near the sidewalk, quietly pushing little pebbles around in some made-up game of theirs. Rachel was not crying. That was the part that hit me hardest, because when my little girl stops crying, that means the hurt has sunk in deep. I had swung by the community center after finishing my shift at Henderson Manufacturing, the same place where I had worked steady for 37 years without missing many days. Most evenings, I would cut through the park and walk home, enjoying the quiet, but for reasons I still cannot fully explain, I drove my car that day instead. Maybe it was the heavy gray clouds hanging low, threatening rain. Or maybe it was something else altogether. I have lived long enough to believe that sometimes you feel trouble coming before your mind can explain it. "Rachel?" I called out as I walked toward her, taking my time because I could already tell this was not going to be simple. "What is going on? Why are you not at home?" She lifted her eyes to meet mine, and I watched something in her expression finally give way, like a crack spreading across glass that had been holding together by nothing but stubborn determination. "Dad," she said, and her voice trembled in a way that made my stomach tighten. "David filed for divorce. His mother convinced him I was holding him back. She told him I was dragging him down, that marrying the daughter of a factory worker put him beneath his potential, and that the boys would never have a future because of where I come from." I eased myself down onto the bench beside her. The cold from the woods seeped straight through my work jacket, but I hardly noticed. "Start from the beginning," I told her gently. "I want to hear all of it." The story did not come out in one clean line. It spilled in fragments, pauses, and half-finished thoughts. David's mother, Margaret Chen, had never truly accepted the marriage from the very start. For 8 long years, she had chipped away at Rachel with small remarks and quiet insults that cut deeper than they sounded. Rachel's clothes were never quite right. Her associate degree from the community college was never impressive enough. The small bungalow they bought in Scarborough, which Rachel had been so proud of, was apparently in the wrong neighborhood. And over the past 6 months, those little digs had turned into something sharper. David worked downtown as a financial analyst at a respectable firm. It was steady work with good pay. But Margaret always believed her only son deserved more. She wanted him with a woman from what she called a better family, someone whose father was not a machinist, someone who could help him rise faster and higher on whatever ladder she had pictured in her mind. 3 days earlier, David came home and told Rachel they needed to have a serious talk. According to her, his mother had been whispering in his ear for weeks. Margaret had lined up an opportunity for him at a more prestigious firm, but the partners there were, as he put it, a certain type of people. They cared about family lineage and social standing. David needed to present himself differently if he wanted to fit in. He did not have to spell it out. The meaning was plain enough. "He told me he still loves me," Rachel said softly, keeping her eyes on the boys as they played. "But his mother thinks we should separate for a while. She said I should take the boys and go somewhere else so he can sort things out." Then her voice dropped even lower. "This morning his lawyer called. Divorce papers. The house is in David's name, so he is keeping it. He said I could have supervised visitation once I find a stable place to live. And by stable he means—" Her words faded off. "He means somewhere his mother approves of," she finished after a moment. "Not your apartment, Dad." She actually put that in an electronic mail message. She wrote that it is not suitable for children to live in a home owned by someone of his limited means. I looked over at my grandsons. They were good boys, thoughtful and bright, always polite. Every summer they came with me to the plant for Family Day, proud as could be to see where Grandpa Bill worked. I had been teaching them the basics, how to use tools safely, how to fix simple things, how to slow down and think a problem through step by step instead of giving up. They were growing into fine young men, and I would be damned if anyone told them they came from nothing. "Get in the car," I said, keeping my voice low but steady. Rachel turned toward me, worry all over her face. Dad, I cannot put that burden on you. Your apartment only has one bedroom, and… Rachel? I cut in, firmer this time. Get in the car. There must have been something in the way I said it, because she did not argue again. We lifted the suitcases and set them carefully into the trunk of my 15-year-old Honda Civic, the same car I had been driving for years without ever feeling the need to upgrade. The boys climbed into the back seat without saying a word. They were quiet in that heavy way children get when they can sense something is wrong, even if they cannot name it. I could see it in their faces. They knew something had shifted. They just did not understand what. As I pulled away, one steady thought filled my head. I would make sure they were all right. That was it. That was the only thing that mattered. But I was not driving them to my apartment like they probably assumed. Instead, I headed north, away from the industrial pocket where I had kept a small place for convenience. We drove past the strip malls and the Tim Hortons, past the rows of practical houses where factory workers and warehouse employees lived in modest comfort. I kept going until we reached Forest Hill, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Toronto, where large homes sit tucked behind stone walls and carefully tended autumn gardens. Dad, where are we going? Rachel finally asked, her voice unsure. Home, I answered. I turned into the driveway of a large Georgian-style house built of brick and limestone, with leaded glass windows and a garden maintained by professionals year-round. Rachel stared at it like she was looking at something unreal. Dad, what are you doing? You cannot just… I stepped out, walked up the path, and unlocked the front door with my own key. From inside, a familiar voice called out, William, is that you? Mrs. Patricia Kowalski, my housekeeper of 12 years, appeared in the hallway. She smiled warmly. Oh, you finally brought them. I have kept the guest rooms prepared for weeks, just in case. Rachel stood frozen in the foyer, her mouth slightly open. The boys pressed close to her legs, their eyes wide as they took in the chandelier, the sweeping curved staircase, and the original artwork displayed along the walls. Dad, Rachel said slowly, trying to steady her voice. What is this place? This is my home, I told her. I have lived here for 23 years, ever since your mother passed. Her brow furrowed. But you always said you lived in that apartment near the plant. I do keep an apartment there, I explained calmly. I stay there when I work late or when I am too tired to drive all the way back. But Rachel, there are things I need to explain. We sat down in the living room while Mrs. Kowalski prepared tea and placed cookies out for the boys. By then, they were already exploring, their earlier silence replaced by excited whispers about how enormous everything felt. After your mother died, when you were 16, I had to make some important choices. I began. You remember that time as grief and me working overtime. And that is true. But there was more to it than that. Your mother and I had always handled our finances carefully. We invested wisely over the years. When she became ill, I focused on her care and hired someone trustworthy to manage our portfolio. By the time she passed, our investments had grown substantially. We had done very well, better than most people would imagine. Rachel shook her head in disbelief. So you are telling me you are what? Financially secure, I said. Then I added, more than secure. The modest apartment, the aging car, the simple routine. Those were deliberate decisions. After your mother died, your world had already changed in the hardest way possible. I did not want to uproot you again by throwing you into a different lifestyle. You were in high school. You had friends. You had stability. I wanted to protect that. I wanted you to learn the value of work. I wanted you to appreciate what you had. I wanted you to judge people by their character, not by their possessions. So you acted like we did not have money? She asked carefully. I never acted, I told her. I work at Henderson Manufacturing because I genuinely love the work. I am skilled at it. I take pride in it. The salary I earn there is honest, and it covers what I need. As for everything else, I gestured around the room. This is simply where I rest at night. Rachel leaned back, trying to absorb it all. Does David know? No, I answered. No one knows except Mrs. Kowalski, my financial advisor, and now you. I kept it private on purpose. I did not want people treating me differently. I did not want friends wondering if I could lend them money. I did not want relationships built on curiosity about my bank account. I wanted to be Bill Henderson, a machinist, a man who does his job well, a father who shows up, a grandfather who cares deeply for his boys. But David's mother said awful things about you, Rachel said softly. About us, about our social class. I smiled, though there was no happiness in it. I know she did, and I believe it is time Margaret Chin learned something about assumptions. Over the following days, I placed a few phone calls. Not many, just quiet conversations with people I had supported over the years and stayed connected with. The new position David was about to step into, the one Margaret had arranged, answered to a senior partner named James Morrison. James and I had invested together 20 years ago. We had both profited handsomely and maintained mutual respect. Took one call. One straightforward conversation about David's recent behavior and the choices he had made. After that, the position he expected to move into was no longer available. As for his current firm, I did not own shares there. However, I knew individuals who did. News has a way of spreading in professional circles. When it became known that David had left his wife and children, citing class differences encouraged by his mother, certain influential people began to take notice. The kind of people who care more about who a man is than where he comes from. Folks who measure character, not family background. I did not have to get David dismissed from his job. That was never my aim. All I did was step back and allow the facts to travel on their own. The truth carries weight all by itself. It does not need much help. As for Margaret Chin, life had a lesson waiting for her too. She sat on the boards of several charitable organizations, positions she treasured because they boosted her standing and gave her access to Toronto's social elite. She enjoyed mentioning important names at dinner parties, speaking proudly about her charitable efforts as if they were medals pinned to her jacket. One of those organizations happened to be the Henderson Foundation, a charity I founded 20 years ago in my late wife's honor. Through it, we provided scholarships to young people from working-class families, helping them attend technical schools or community colleges. We wanted to give hardworking kids a real shot at building solid futures. Margaret had served on that board for 3 years. During much of that time, she consistently voted against applicants she labeled unsuitable. Many of those students had parents who worked in factories or warehouses. Kids like Rachel had once been. For years, I had attended board meetings through a proxy vote sent by my attorney. I preferred to stay out of the spotlight. But this time I decided to show up in person. The look on Margaret's face when I walked into that downtown boardroom was worth every minute of the hour-long drive. Mr. Henderson, the board chair greeted me warmly, standing to shake my hand. What an honor. We hardly ever have the pleasure of seeing you in person. Margaret had gone pale. I could almost see her mind racing, putting the pieces together. The Henderson Foundation, Bill Henderson, the machinist she had quietly dismissed as beneath her family. I have recently become aware of concerns regarding how we select scholarship recipients, I said evenly. It appears we may have been rejecting applicants based on their parents' occupations. That runs directly against what my late wife and I intended when we created this foundation. The conversation that followed stayed civil, but it was firm. There was no confusion about where I stood. By the end of the meeting, Margaret had offered her resignation. She walked out with just enough composure to save face, but everyone in that room understood exactly why she was leaving. And in circles like that, news travels quickly. The following week, David called me. His voice sounded strained, tight like a rope pulled too far. Bill, we need to talk. About what, David? I asked. Do not pretend. I know who you are now, what you are. Why did you not tell me? You never asked, I replied calmly, and it would not have changed anything. You did not fall in love with Rachel because of money. You loved her because she is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and a devoted mother. Those qualities are what make her who she is. They are the same values she learned growing up in a home where we worked for everything we had. My mother did not know, he said weakly. Your mother made assumptions rooted in prejudice, I answered. She looked down on honest labor. She decided that factory workers were lesser people and that their families mattered less. Then she handed that thinking to you and you accepted it. There was a long stretch of silence on the line. I want to fix this, he finally said. That is not my choice to make, I told him. That decision belongs to Rachel. And to the boys. They are 8 years old, he said. 8 is old enough, I replied. Old enough to remember that their father chose status over family. Old enough to remember standing outside with suitcases. Those kinds of memories do not fade. I made a mistake, he said quietly. You made a decision, I corrected him. You are 42 years old, David. A grown man. You chose your mother's approval over your wife's dignity. You chose appearances over your son's sense of security. Those were not accidents. They were deliberate choices. Another long pause filled the space between us. I am sorry, he said at last. Tell that to Rachel, I answered. Tell it to Liam and Noah. But understand this, David, an apology is only words. If you truly mean it, you will have to prove it with more than that. I will say this for David, he made an effort. I will give him that much. For 2 solid weeks, he called Rachel every single day. He showed up at the house carrying flowers, bringing toys for the boys, and handing over letters he had written himself, page after page, trying to explain what he had done, trying to apologize, trying to ask for one more chance to make it right. Rachel handled it with grace. She listened without raising her voice. She accepted the gifts on behalf of Liam and Noah. And each time, after he finished speaking, she gently closed the door. One evening, when the boys were upstairs working on their homework at the large desk in their shared room, the same room that used to be my home office, I sat down beside her. How are you holding up? I asked. She did not hesitate. Sad, she said. I loved him. Part of me still does. But Dad, I cannot trust him anymore. She looked tired, but steady. Whenever things got difficult, he turned to his mother instead of standing beside me and building something stronger with me. Every time she criticized me, he stayed silent. When she made those small, cutting remarks about your job, about the neighborhood I grew up in, about the clothes I wore or the education I had, he just let it slide. He never defended us. I listened because she needed to say it out loud. You deserve better than that, I told her quietly. And so do the boys. They need to grow up seeing that you protect the people you love. They need to understand that when life gets complicated, you do not walk away from your family. She gave me a faint smile. You taught me that, she said. You showed me. After Mom died, everything was hard. But you kept working. You kept showing up. You kept loving me. You never disappeared. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Your mother would be proud of the woman you have become. I told her, and I meant every word. 3 months went by. Rachel enrolled the boys in an excellent local school just a short walk from the house. Every morning, they headed out together down the tree-lined street. In the evenings, she began taking classes at York University, picking up the degree she had put on hold when the twins were born. She had always dreamed of becoming a teacher. Now she finally had the room in her life to chase that dream. David's calls slowly grew less frequent. He had his own consequences to face. The legal community in Toronto is smaller than most people realize. News of the divorce and the reasons behind it had circulated. Some colleagues quietly lost respect for him. Others understood how complicated family pressure can be, but still, opportunities that once seemed certain began slipping out of reach. That was not because I pulled any strings. It was because reputation carries weight in professional circles. And once it shifts, people notice. Margaret, too, had grown quieter. She lost her board positions. Invitations stopped coming as often. The same social standing she once guarded so fiercely began to crumble. Friends who once admired her started asking careful questions. They began looking at her differently. She had built her identity on the belief that she stood above others. And when the people she dismissed turned out to be no less worthy than she was, that belief cracked. I ran into her one afternoon at the Loblaws on St. Clair. She stood in the organic produce section, examining vegetables. She looked worn down, older than I remembered. When she noticed me, she stiffened. "Mrs. Chun," I said politely. "Mr. Henderson," she replied, her voice tight. "I suppose you are pleased with yourself." "I am pleased that my daughter and grandsons are safe and happy," I answered evenly. "If that is what you mean." Her jaw tightened. "You ruined my son's career. You humiliated me." "I did nothing but allow the truth to come to light," I said calmly. "You damaged your son's marriage by teaching him that status matters more than love. And you embarrassed yourself by treating decent, hard-working people as if they were beneath you. And you cost yourself your grandson's childhood." I told her, keeping my voice steady. "You put your own prejudice ahead of their well-being." Her eyes filled with tears. Not polite tears. Real ones. "They will not let me see them," she whispered. "That is Rachel's decision," I said. "She is shielding her boys from the idea that love comes with conditions. From the belief that people can be discarded because of their income bracket. That is not a lesson she is willing to let them learn." She shook her head. "I only wanted what was best for David." "You wanted what appeared best," I corrected her gently. "Those are not the same thing. What would have been best for David was a wife who loved him, children who adored him, and a quiet, steady life filled with real happiness. What looked impressive was climbing the social ladder, earning more money, and being seen with the right crowd. You pushed him toward the second option, and now he has lost both." I turned to walk away, but she called out to me. "Have you ever loved someone so much that you wanted to protect them from making mistakes?" I stopped and looked back at her. "Every single day of my daughter's life," I said. "But protection is not control, Mrs. Chun. Protection means teaching someone how to make wise choices, then trusting them to make those choices. Love is allowing people to be who they truly are, not shaping them into what makes you look better." She stared down at her shopping cart, at the expensive organic vegetables that would end up in meals she would eat alone. "My late wife was a nurse," I said, softening my tone. "She worked at St. Michael's Hospital for 20 years. Mostly night shifts because that is when they needed her most. She would come home exhausted, her feet sore, her clothes carrying the scent of disinfectant. Some people might have looked at her and seen only a nurse, just another healthcare worker. But when I looked at her, I saw someone who held frightened hands, who comforted families, who saved lives." I paused before adding, "Class is not about what you own, Mrs. Chun. It is about what you do with what you have. It is about how you treat people when there is nothing to gain." I left her standing there in the produce aisle. Spring arrived, bringing change with it. Rachel was accepted into a teaching placement program. In 2 years, she would graduate and be certified to teach elementary school, guiding children like Liam and Noah. The boys were flourishing. Their grades were strong. They had made friends. Every evening, they rushed to show me their assignments, excited about a math solution or a science experiment that had gone well. In April, David asked to meet for coffee. We sat across from each other at a second cup on Bloor Street. The air between us felt stiff. "I started therapy," he said. "I am trying to understand why I let my mother's voice overpower my own judgment." "That is a good step," I told him. "She is not doing well," he continued. "My mother is depressed. She feels like she has lost everything that mattered to her." "What mattered to her were the wrong things," I said plainly. "I know," he admitted. "I see that now. But she is still my mother. And she is suffering." I took a sip of my coffee and looked out the window. The day was bright. Cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom along the street. "David, you do not need my permission to care for your mother," I said. "That is your responsibility. But if you are asking whether she can be brought back into Rachel's life or the boys' lives, the answer is no. Not unless Rachel chooses that. And she may never choose it." He lowered his eyes. "Your mother caused real damage," I continued. "Words matter. Actions matter. You cannot undo what has already been broken." "She wants to apologize," he said. "Apologies often ease the conscience of the one giving them," I replied. They do not automatically repair harm. They do not rebuild trust. They are simply words. Then what repairs the damage? He asked. Time, I said. Changed behavior, consistency, humility, years of showing you are different, not just saying you are. He nodded slowly. I lost my family because I could not stand up to her. Yes, I answered. He hesitated. Do you think Rachel will ever forgive me? I believe Rachel has already forgiven you, I said. Forgiveness means letting go of anger, but forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. A person can forgive and still decide not to reopen the door. Forgiveness brings her peace. Reconciliation would benefit you. She does not owe you that. He swallowed hard. The boys ask about me, he said quietly. And Rachel allows them to call you, I reminded him. She arranged supervised visits. She is not cutting you out of their lives. She is protecting her sons from being hurt again. There is a difference. We finished our coffee with more silence than words. Cups empty, thoughts heavy. Right before we stood up to leave, David cleared his throat. I never thanked you, he said, for taking them in, for giving them stability. They are my family, I answered simply. That is what family does. He hesitated, then added, my mother always said you were just a factory worker. I could not help but smile at that. I am a factory worker, I said. I have spent 40 years at Henderson Manufacturing. I run the precision machining department. I train the new hires. I make sure the parts we produce meet the highest standards. I take pride in that work. I looked him straight in the eye. Your mother was not wrong about what I do, David. She was wrong about what it means. By the time summer rolled around, Rachel had met someone new. His name was James Park. He taught 6th grade at the boys' school and coached soccer after classes. He grew up in Etobicoke, where his parents owned a small dry cleaning business. He was patient with Liam and Noah. He had an easy way about him. And best of all, he made Rachel laugh again. I liked him from the start. One evening, after James had taken the boys to the park to practice penalty kicks, I asked Rachel, does he know about David? He knows everything, she said. I told him the whole story, and he said his parents faced discrimination too. People assumed they were not intelligent because they worked with their hands. He understands that kind of judgment, and he is not intimidated by... She glanced around at the house. I gestured toward the high ceilings and polished floors. Buy this. Rachel laughed. Dad, I told him exactly who you are. A machinist who happens to have money. And what did he say? He said that is the best kind of person. Someone who stayed connected to real work. He is not interested in the house or the money. He is interested in me, and in the boys. Then he sounds like a smart man, I said. The boys took to James right away. He showed them how to improve their soccer skills. He helped with homework. He listened when they talked. He treated them like they mattered. He never tried to replace David. He never competed with the supervised visits. He was just steady, consistent, present. David noticed. I could hear it in his voice during the occasional phone calls we still had. Rachel is seeing someone? He asked once. Yes, I told him. The boys like him. There was a pause. Do you think? His voice faded. Do I think what, David? Do you think I have lost them forever? I took a moment before answering. You will always be their father. That part does not change. Biology is permanent. But being a dad is about showing up. It is about making your children feel safe and secure. Right now, James is doing the daily work you stepped away from. I let that settle. You can still attend soccer games. You can show up for birthdays. You can build something steady over time. But bedtime stories, homework at the kitchen table, being the person they run to when they are scared, that is built through consistency. You gave that up. Whether you earn it back depends on what you choose to do over years, not weeks. September came around. It had been 1 full year since I found Rachel sitting alone on that bench with the boys and those suitcases. Liam and Noah started 3rd grade that fall. I drove them to school on the first day. We walked past the playground where children were arriving with new backpacks and bright sneakers. The air felt crisp and full of possibility. The boys ran ahead, laughing as they spotted their friends. As I stood near the entrance, I noticed a familiar figure off to the side. Margaret Chen. She looked older than I remembered, quieter. She stood at a distance, watching her grandsons but keeping space between herself and the family she once tried to control. She respected the boundaries now. Our eyes met. She did not approach. She did not speak. She simply stood there, witnessing the life that continued without her at the center of it. After a moment, she turned and walked away. "Is that David's mother?" Rachel asked, stepping up beside me. "Yes," I said. "How long has she been coming here like that?" "I am not sure," I admitted. "Does it matter?" Rachel watched Margaret's figure grow smaller down the sidewalk. "I do not know if I can forgive what she did," she said softly. "What she said about you, about us, about our worth." I looked at my daughter, strong and steady in the morning light. "You do not have to forgive her," I said gently. "That is your decision," I told her. "But Rachel, do not let her bitterness take up space in your heart. She was wrong about us. Still, we do not have to let her misunderstanding shape who we are. We already know who we are. We already know what truly matters." She looked at me. "What does matter, Dad?" I watched Liam and Noah laughing with their friends, their backpacks hanging too big on their narrow shoulders, their whole futures stretched out in front of them like an open road. "What matters," I said slowly, "is love, work that has meaning, treating people with dignity, raising children who understand that a person's value is not measured by a job title or a bank account, teaching them that a janitor and a chief executive officer deserve the same respect, that a nurse and a doctor are both essential, that a machinist and a lawyer both contribute something real to this world." She studied me. "You could have told everyone who you really were. You could have put Margaret in her place from the beginning." "And what would that have proven?" I asked. "That I had more money than she assumed? That does not erase prejudice. It just makes someone more cautious about who they judge out loud. Real change happens when a person understands that the judgment itself was wrong, that all honest work carries dignity, that human worth is not a transaction." Rachel slipped her arm through mine. "When did you get so wise?" I smiled a little. "Your mother taught me. She used to say that you learn who someone really is by watching how they treat the waitress, the janitor, the person who cannot offer them anything in return. That is where true character shows up." Rachel's eyes softened. "I miss her." "Me too," I said. "Every single day. But I see her in you, in the way you are raising those boys, in the way you teach them kindness, resilience, and self-respect." The school bell rang, and we stood there watching Liam and Noah disappear through the doors. Rachel had to head to her classes at York University. I had my shift at Henderson Manufacturing starting at noon. "Dad," she said before getting into her car, "thank you for everything, for being who you are, not what Margaret Chen wanted you to be." I shrugged lightly. "I am just a machinist, sweetheart. That is all I have ever been." "You are much more than that," she said. I watched her drive off, then climbed into my old Honda Civic. It needed new brake pads. I had noticed the wear a few days earlier. I figured I would replace them over the weekend and maybe show the boys how to do it. Practical skills, useful knowledge, the kind of lessons that stick. When I arrived at the plant, my crew was already there waiting. We had a large order to complete, precision parts for medical equipment, important components, work that mattered. The people who used those machines would never know the names of the machinists who shaped those pieces of metal, but that was all right with me. I did not need applause. I had something better. I had a daughter standing strong on her own 2 feet, chasing her calling. I had grandsons growing up secure in the knowledge that they were loved, that they mattered, that their value was not tied to a postal code or a paycheck. I had honest work I was proud of, a life built on substance, not image. In time, David remarried. He met a kind pediatric nurse at a hospital fundraiser. She treated Liam and Noah gently during their visits, and I could see she genuinely cared. Margaret Chin eventually moved to Vancouver to live with her sister. She put distance between herself and what was left of her life in Toronto. I heard she volunteered at a food bank out there. Maybe she was learning something. Maybe she was not. That part was no longer my burden to carry. 2 years after they met, Rachel and James got engaged. He proposed at the park where they first had a real conversation, with Liam and Noah right there to witness it. The boys were thrilled to be part of that moment. The wedding was small and simple. Family and close friends gathered in our backyard beneath the maple trees. Felt right, honest, warm. The night before the ceremony, Rachel found me downstairs in my workshop. I was putting the final touches on a jewelry box I had made for her. Cherry wood, dovetail joints, a maple inlay set carefully into the lid. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface. "You made this. I made one like it for your mother when we first got married," I said. "She kept her most precious things in it. I thought you should have one too." Rachel traced the careful joints, the clean lines, the precision of the work. "All those years," she said quietly. "You were teaching me without saying much. Work hard. Be honest. Treat people the right way," she continued softly. "And never let someone else decide what you are worth. That is what counts." I nodded. Margaret Chin measured value by job titles and bank balances. And look where that led her. She lost her son's respect. She lost time with her grandsons. She lost her peace of mind. I placed my hand over hers. "Meanwhile, I have you. I have Liam and Noah. I have work I believe in and a conscience that lets me sleep at night. So tell me, Rachel, who is really wealthy?" She wrapped her arms around me, and I held my daughter close, breathing in that moment. I felt grateful for the choices I had made, for the principles I had held on to, for the life I had built piece by piece. The next afternoon, as I walked Rachel down the aisle we had set up in our backyard garden, I found myself thinking about all the people who had judged me over the years. The ones who saw work boots and an old Honda Civic and assumed they understood my limits. The ones who said just a factory worker, like that phrase was supposed to shrink a man. They never realized those words said more about them than they ever said about me. I thought about my late wife. She loved me in my work clothes. She was proud of these calloused hands that used to hold hers. She taught our daughter that character outweighs credentials every single time. I even thought about Margaret Chin, out in Vancouver, learning far too late that the people she dismissed were the very ones who could have taught her what truly matters. Then I looked at Liam and Noah, watching their mother marry a good man. They were seeing love, commitment, and family in action. They were learning, without a lecture, that real wealth is not found in a bank account. It is found in who stands beside you when life turns hard. The ceremony itself was simple and beautiful. Nothing flashy. Just honest vows spoken under maple trees, surrounded by people who genuinely cared. During the reception, James's father, Mr. Park, came to sit next to me. He was in his 70s, his hands rough from decades in the dry cleaning business, his back slightly bent from years of hard labor. "My wife and I worked very hard for our son," he said in careful English. "Sometimes people look down on us. Immigrant family, service business. But we raised a good son. James respects everyone. He does not chase money or status. We did that part right." "You surely did," I told him. "And my daughter is lucky for it." He nodded. "James told me you work in a factory, but you have this beautiful home. You could have chosen anything. Why keep working?" I watched my grandsons running across the lawn, their laughter floating through the air like music. "Because the work is real," I said. "Because it matters. And because I want those boys to understand that honest labor carries dignity. You do not measure a person by their title. You measure them by their character. That lesson is worth more than any fortune." Mr. Park smiled slowly. "Yes, that is wisdom." We sat together in comfortable silence. Two men who had spent our lives working with our hands, watching our children step into their futures. We both knew we had given them something greater than money. We had given them values, self-respect, The understanding that worth comes from within, not from someone else's opinion. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the boys were asleep upstairs, I stood alone in my workshop. I looked at the tools hanging neatly on the wall. Each one had a purpose. Each one had helped me build something, fix something, improve something. That is what we are here to do, I thought. Make things better. Pass on what we know. Love without conditions. Work with integrity. Stand up for what is right even when it costs us. Margaret Chin taught me something too, though she never meant to. She showed me how fear can make people cruel. How insecurity pushes people to judge. How someone who does not feel secure in their own worth may try to lift themselves up by pushing others down. I did not hate her. I felt sorry for her. She had love within reach. She had family offered to her. And she chose hierarchy over connection. Status over substance. Now she lived with those decisions, learning painful lessons that might have come easier if she had chosen humility. But that was her path. Mine was here, in this house, with my family sleeping upstairs, with work waiting for me on Monday, with my grandsons growing up understanding that blue collar is not a measure of value. It is simply a description of honest effort. The world likes to tell us that certain careers matter more than others, that some people are more important because of what they earn or where they live or what degrees hang framed on their walls. But I have learned differently. The mechanic who fixes your car with care is just as important as the investor who manages a fund. The teacher shaping young minds matters as much as the executive running a corporation. The nurse who holds your hand when you are scared is worth just as much as the surgeon in the operating room. We are all contributing something, and the person who cannot see dignity in honest work is the one who is truly lacking. That is what I will keep teaching Liam and Noah. That is the inheritance that counts. Not the house, not the money, but the understanding that they are valuable because of who they are, not what they accomplish. That their worth is built in, not earned through applause. That respect is offered freely. That kindness costs nothing and means everything. Someday, when they are older, they will understand why their grandpa Bill stayed at that factory for 40 years. Why I drove an old car. Why I wore work clothes without shame. Why I never felt the need to flash what I had. It was never about hiding who I was. It was about showing them who they could become. People without pretense. People with integrity. People who measure worth by character, not credentials. That is the real legacy. That is what matters. And that is something no one can ever take away.